Tonight on Ukraine Today, Russian logistics hit. Ukraine struck a major railway hub in Russia's Rostov region. Talks in Istanbul. What to expect from this round of Ukraine-Russia negotiations. Nuclear escalation. From the first time in 17 years, the US has deployed nuclear bombs to the United Kingdom. Controversial law in Ukraine. A new bill that caused public outrage and may damage Ukraine's relations with key Western partners. All that and more, right now. Hi, I'm Volodymyr Rabchun. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and let's get to the news. Ukraine targeted a major Russian logistics hub in the Rostov region. The railway junction is a vital part of the supply line used by Russian forces to move weapons, fuel, and equipment for Putin's terrorists. A legitimate target, and it's being successfully hit. Russian forces deployed a newly formed Chechen mechanized regiment. It includes 4 battalions, around 1,500 troops. At Russia's current loss rate, that's about a day and a half. Just yesterday alone, Russia lost at least 970 soldiers, killed and wounded. Since the start of the full-scale invasion, that's 1,045,220 soldiers. On top of that, Ukraine's defense forces destroyed 3 Russian tanks, 2 armored vehicles, 42 artillery systems, and dozens more pieces of enemy military hardware. Poland urged its citizens to leave Russia, especially those who hold both Polish and Russian passports. Why? Because Russia treats them only as Russian citizens, and they could be conscripted at any moment. Ukraine's air defense shot down 27 out of 71 drones launched by Russia in another night of terror. 18 drones went off radar, and 26 struck 14 different locations. In the Kharkiv region, a market and a postal office were hit. In Sumy, critical infrastructure was targeted. Part of the region is now without electricity. In the Dnipropetrovsk region, Russian drones struck civilian areas in Kryvyi Rih. Luckily, there were no casualties. The Netherlands says it's ready to make a significant contribution to Ukraine's air defense. That's what Defense Minister Ruben Brekelmans said after the latest Ramstein meeting. His message: Russia wants to break Ukraine's will. Netherlands can't let that happen. What exactly this significant contribution includes, missiles or another Patriot system, is still unknown. Today in Istanbul, Ukraine-Russia talks. On the table, prisoner exchanges, the return of kidnapped Ukrainian children, and planning a possible leaders' meeting to end the war. The Ukrainian delegation includes 14 officials from the Foreign Ministry, the President's Office, the Armed Forces, Security Service, and Defense Intelligence. The group is led by National Security and Defense Council Secretary Rustem Umerov, Ukraine's former defense minister. As for Russia, Putin again picked Vladimir Medinsky as chief negotiator. That's the same Medinsky known for his alternative history, and the man NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte once angrily mentioned to the US President Donald Trump. Honestly, I try to keep my expectations low, just to avoid big disappointments. But here's the thing, Putin has 41 days left to strike a deal with Ukraine. Otherwise, the US will increase sanctions and impose new tariffs. The US has deployed nuclear bombs to the UK for the first time in 17 years. Why now? Details in the next report.
For the first time in 17 years, Washington has brought weapons of mass destruction to Britain. The US has delivered the most advanced version of bombs, which are the main nuclear weapons of America's strategic forces, to its largest European airbase. However, neither the American nor the British authorities have commented in any way on the alleged deployment of these weapons.
The first reports about the possible return of nuclear weapons to the territory of the United Kingdom date back to 2022. At that time, Western media reported that the United States was carrying out reconstruction of this facility, which had been effectively mothballed in 2008. And accordingly, the actions of the United States should be seen as a gradual return to the tactics of nuclear deterrence, which was one of the defining features of the NATO bloc. This also applies to the foreign policy course of the United Kingdom.
As reported by British publications, last week B-61-12 thermonuclear bombs were delivered to a newly built secure storage facility at the Lakenheath Air Base in eastern England. Thus, the United Kingdom has become the sixth country in Europe where US nuclear weapons are deployed.
In March, Polish President Andrzej Duda called on the United States to deploy nuclear capabilities on his country's territory as a possible preventive measure to deter an armed invasion by the Russian Federation from the territory of the Republic of Belarus. In addition, on the 5th of March, French President Emmanuel Macron stated that his country is ready to deploy its nuclear capabilities on the territory of a number of European countries.
The B-61-12G gravity bombs have a yield of up to 50 kilotons, which is more than 3 times the power of the atomic weapon dropped on Hiroshima in 1945. Simply put, it's like having 4 bombs in one.
This weapon is considered one of the most versatile in the United States' nuclear arsenal. Its development began back in the 1960s, and since then there have been 12 modifications. It should be noted that the B-61-12H has 4 possible yield settings, which is quite remarkable, ranging from 0.3 to 50 kilotons. Accordingly, the development of the latest modification, the B-61-12, began in 2008.
American nuclear weapons had already been deployed at the Lakenheath base in the UK during the Cold War, but they were completely removed from there in 2008 as part of arms reductions in Europe. The likely return of nuclear weapons is part of a program to develop and modernize nuclear facilities in response to heightened tensions with the Kremlin following Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
Back in March 2025, Trump called on the Russian Federation and China to pursue nuclear disarmament, but he did not receive any corresponding political signal from either the Russian Federation or accordingly from China. And against the backdrop of recent statements by the political leadership of the Russian Federation about the possibility of a nuclear strike on the territory of the United Kingdom, the return of the nuclear arsenal to this country serves as a warning to the Russian Federation and makes it clear that the United States is prepared to respond appropriately to nuclear threats from the Russian Federation.
Earlier, Russia had already stated that the deployment of American weapons in the United Kingdom would be regarded by Moscow as an escalation and would be met with compensatory countermeasures.
Currently, 5 nuclear facilities are being modernized on the territory of the Russian Federation itself. And this indicates that the Russian Federation is sending a political signal to the United States that, in fact, it is denouncing the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. There are 11 nuclear facilities located on the territory of the Russian Federation. But problems with the Russian budget, namely the lack of funds, currently allow for the reconstruction of only 5 facilities. And according to the Russian side's own assessment, this will once again turn into a long-term construction project and yet another set of corruption monuments to the Russian Ministry of Defense.
On the 24th of June, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom announced plans to purchase F-35A fighter jets from the United States, which are capable of carrying B-61-12 nuclear bombs. This purchase represents the largest strengthening of the United Kingdom's nuclear capability in a generation.
Ukraine is fighting for freedom. Support independent Ukrainian journalism so we can keep telling the truth about Russia's war. Click the link in the description to become our sponsor. And don't forget to like, subscribe, comment and share this video if you think it's worth it. Thank you. Back in Ukraine, protests erupt over a controversial new law. Hundreds of Ukrainians took to the streets across the country. The reason? A bill that strips the National Anti-Corruption Bureau, NABU, and the Specialized Anti-Corruption Prosecutor's Office, SAPO, of their independence. These bodies are now under the control of the Prosecutor General. Many Ukrainians and Western partners call it anti-democratic and counterproductive. Still, President Zelensky signed it into law after meeting with the heads of NABU, SAPO, the Security Service and the Prosecutor General's office.
The anti-corruption infrastructure will work, but only without Russian influence. Everything needs to be cleaned up, and there has to be more justice. Of course, the National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine and the Specialized Anti-Corruption Prosecution will keep doing their job. What matters is that the Prosecutor General is determined to make sure the law truly works in Ukraine, that punishment is inevitable for those who break it. That's exactly what Ukraine needs. Cases that have been sitting untouched for years must finally be investigated. For years, officials who fled Ukraine have been living peacefully abroad, in very nice countries, and somehow without any legal consequences. That's just not normal.
Megan Mobbs, head of the Weatherman Foundation and daughter of US presidential envoy Kit Kellogg, also commented on the law. Here's what she posted on X. This decision is truly, unbelievably, mind-bogglingly stupid. It happens at the worst possible time, given the recent positive shifts in US policy. This gives a strong narrative to bad actors. And now, just a little analysis. Were there concerns about NABU and SAPO's effectiveness? Yes. Were they disbanded? No. Is it good that they lost independence? From an efficiency perspective, it's debatable. Could they become more effective in the new structure? Possibly. Is it good that Ukrainians protest for justice even during war? Yes, of course. Did all protest participants read the bill in detail? Probably not. Some yes, but not all. In fact, the number of participants may have been much lower. Still, the image of large-scale protests was created. Could bad actors, as Megan Mobbs said, use footage from these protests against Ukraine? Sadly, yes. Did the government communicate this bill clearly? No. And that might be the weakest link in this whole situation.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
Russia's new enemy, Azerbaijan's president Ilham Aliyev. Russian propagandists attacked him verbally for his position on the Russian war in Ukraine. The latest dose of Russian hysteria in the next report.
The full-scale war, which has now been going on for almost 4 years, reveals unexpected truths and paradoxes, from the lack of a generation and the liberation that no one asked for, to propaganda stories and endless strikes on infrastructure. But why does the Russian person fight? Not because he has to, not because he's defending something, but because he simply cannot not fight. And of course, there's boredom. Life hasn't worked out. The daily routine is dull. So you need a purpose. And as everyone knows, it's easiest to look for meaning inside an armored personnel carrier.
But why exactly does a Russian person truly need to fight?
Oh, just out of boredom. You sit there, life goes on, and it just gets tiresome. You sit there, it's all the same. The potato patch, some kind of vegetable tops. So you think, why not go to war? Why don't I go on a campaign with Igor out there to the Polovtsian lands? It would be interesting to see the Polovtians, their waists, their bellies. Let me go to war, but then the sun was eclipsed. Oh, I don't believe it. The sun, I'm going to go to war. He went for a bit. And then came the Battle of Kulikovo. It's just pure pleasure to go to war, really. Peresvet. He was just sitting around out of sheer boredom on the stove benches. So they sent him off, and he fought.
Meanwhile, the Russian Orthodox Church continues to look for those to blame. They finally diagnosed the cause of family troubles. Women are to blame because they filed for divorce. It all makes sense. If you file for divorce, you've destroyed the family, regardless of the reasons.
Love comes later, or it doesn't come at all. Unfortunately, in most cases here, it doesn't come. Because 70% of divorces, that's a catastrophe. And 80% of the time, women are the ones that fall. And fault for what? That is, they're the ones fighting for divorce, not men, but women. And why is that? Because women are sensitive by nature. Women need cannons.
Kharkiv region, the Russian army arrives with so-called liberation, but for some reason the local residents give away their positions. They hide equipment, they say they're sitting somewhere in the forest, they point out locations, they fire from the village, they pass on coordinates, as if they're not happy, as if they weren't waiting, as if they themselves know who their enemy is and who isn't.
The situation with the civilians there was rather peculiar. It turns out...
Yeah, listen, it really stung. How did they give you away?
Well, how did they give us away? I saw a woman, a girl with a child, pointing with her finger along with a young man, apparently her husband, showing where the guys were hiding. Well, the Russians.
Why?
That's just what they wanted to do.
Nikita Sergeyevich Mikhalkov, a people's philosopher and, as it turns out, a potential expert on patriotism, expressed mild bewilderment. Like, why aren't his shows being used in school lessons about important topics?
Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin knows about Besogon and told me that it's a very powerful weapon. What happened? Two scenarios emerged. One scenario without Besogon and another scenario at the discretion, so to speak, of the teachers. If they want to show it, they show it. If they don't, they don't. I have no ambitions in this regard, but as it turns out, you can be heard by the president.
In the fourth year of the war, something unexpected became clear. An Aeroflot gold card doesn't guarantee a flight to Venice if it's morning at Domodedovo. The siren is sounding, and there are drone wreckages on the runway. How many years can you live next to a war but not in it? And suddenly, it turned out, there is no more distance. Everything is much closer, not just on screen, but outside the window. Not somewhere out there, but right here.
My Istanbul-Venice tickets disappeared. 3 tickets. Now, for each ticket, they're asking me to pay an extra $980. I lost my ticket, same thing. Exactly the same, yes. Exactly the same. What is going on? There should be at least some information.
Well, now everything is clear. Russia wants Ukraine as a state to cease to exist. There was no denazification, no demilitarization, no desire to save Ukrainians dreaming of becoming part of a greater Russia.
What do we want? We want Ukraine as a state to cease to exist, for its military potential to be completely destroyed, and for the political class that has always turned any Ukrainian state into an anti-Russia to disappear as well. For these people to leave, I don't know, let me put it gently, to emigrate somewhere or just go far away.
There was only one motive: to destroy, to subjugate, to wipe off the map.
So that from Ukraine it would never, again, for decades or centuries to come, be possible to create another anti-Russia. That is our goal, and if there is an opportunity to strike, we strike. If there is an opportunity to destroy military potential, we destroy it. Let them be a little afraid of us. They've gotten too relaxed over there.
Director Konstantin Bogomolov, known for his postmodern productions and marriage to Ksenia Sobchak, has once again shaken up the media space. This time, though, in a metaphysical way. In an interview, Bogomolov stated,
I think that what happened 3 years ago has so radically changed the environment we live in that in a certain sense, well, it's the fortune of our generation that we find ourselves in this historical period, which forces us to talk about the essential things.
Well, indeed, for some it's war, and for others it's a reason for deep reflection in a mansion on Rubliovka.
And finally, how Russia uses culture to push propaganda and how to fight back. An example from Italy, where concerts by pro-Putin conductor Valery Gergiev were recently cancelled.
While the Kremlin continues its war against Ukraine, Valery Gergiev, a close ally of Putin and a long-standing symbol of Kremlin cultural policy, is expected to perform in the luxurious interiors of the Royal Palace in Caserta, Italy.
No one understands anything.
This is a major cultural event, and the Royal Palace of Caserta itself, in terms of its significance among landmarks, ranks alongside the Colosseum. Gergiev was invited there to a music festival in Italy, together with soloists from the Mariinsky Theatre, the very same theatre that, under his leadership, has long since become a tool of foreign propaganda.
As a kind of collective ambassador for Russia, sometimes appearing in difficult places, I try to do something so that the understanding of the actions of the Russian leadership relationship, especially our president, is deeper, if you will, more direct and sincere, so that through direct contact with Russians and even with us, the artists, people can form their own impression of what Russia is today.
Gergiev refused to condemn Putin's attack on Ukraine, after which he stopped being invited to the West, and the performance scheduled for the 27th of July in the city of Caserta was supposed to mark the musician's return to Europe.
I am confident that Maestro Gergiev and his wonderful ensemble will do this with their usual brilliance.
The Vice President of the European Parliament, Pina Pizzerno, condemned this gesture.
Even after 3.5 years of war, there are still those who have not understood that supporting the Putin regime, including through such cultural initiatives, legitimizes this terrible imperialism and poses a serious threat. This is not about censorship. Gergiev is part of a deliberate Kremlin strategy. He is one of their cultural envoys intended to soften Western public opinion. This is part of their war.
The European Commission was quick to point out the festival is not funded by the European Union, but with Italian money.
European stages should not be given to those who support the aggressive war in Ukraine. We urge cultural organizations to cooperate with artists who support democracy.
Yulia Navalnaya, the widow of the late opposition leader, also called for the cancellation of Gergiev's performance in Italy, and activists held protests. The cancellation of the concert was also demanded by about 40 organizations of Ukrainians from Italy, Poland and Canada. However, a representative of the Campania region, where Gergiev's concert is scheduled to take place, spoke out in defense of the concert.
Culture should not be subject to political influence. We do not demand that these people answer for the choices made by politicians. This world should remain a place where dialogue, solidarity and respect are welcome.
For outstanding service to the state, active work in the fields of culture, art, sports, and for strengthening the economic and defense potential of the Russian Federation, the following have been awarded.
Gergiev, despite his closeness to Putin, regularly performed on stages in Italy and other European countries until 2022. His long and brilliant career includes leading the London Symphony Orchestra and the Munich Philharmonic.
We were truly welcomed and deeply appreciated, feeling genuinely valued.
Just a few hours before the first Russian missiles were launched at Ukraine, Gergiev was performing on the stage of Milan's La Scala Opera House. The city's mayor called on him to speak out against the war, but Gergiev chose to remain silent.
I liked your question. How's life?
Gergiev lost numerous international contracts. Comrade Putin was dismissed from his position as chief conductor of the Munich Philharmonic Orchestra. He was also dropped by European philharmonics and opera houses.
Now we perform in Russia more than we used to, whereas we used to travel to European countries performing 2 or 3 times a year, as well as in Asia and North America. There was hardly a place where we didn't perform. Now, it seems to me, we focused on our home rehearsals, home performances here in St. Petersburg. That's very good.
It was Valery Gergiev who was then entrusted with managing the Bolshoi Theater in Moscow, in addition to the Mariinsky Theater, where he dismissed the director who had signed an open letter in 2022 against the war that Russia is waging.
Today, I am officially saying a heartfelt goodbye to you all, as today marks my very last day working at the prestigious Bolshoi Theater.
Gergiev is Putin's pocket conductor. For the sake of money and fame, he obediently did everything he was told. He took part in the re-election campaign and was Putin's trusted representative.
You have to know how to carry yourself. A president must, so that the country is taken seriously. I don't know if they were afraid or respected him, but they took him seriously.
He was pleased with the amendment of the Constitution of the Russian Federation and supported the annexation of Crimea by Russia in 2014.
I am friends with many people who contributed to the flourishing of the Russian economy.
In 2008, during the armed conflict in South Ossetia, he gave a concert in Chkinvali.
Today we are in Chkinvali to express our admiration for you.
In 2016, shortly after Russia's military operation, he performed in Palmyra, Syria. Before the performance, a speech by Putin was shown. The organizers of a music festival in Italy cancelled the concert of Russian conductor Valery Gergiev. Gergiev, however, stated that he had no information about the cancellation of his concert.
Art is free and not subject to censorship. But propaganda, even if performed skillfully, is something else entirely. That is why the concert by Valery Gergiev, a friend and advisor to Putin, organized and funded by the regional government and companies, poses a risk of sending the wrong message to society.
Canceling people like Gergiev is an appropriate response to Putin's regime and the wars he has unleashed. That is why the Italian festival organizers' attempt to pull the Putin supporter Gergiev out of the dusty chest provoked a sharp reaction from those who saw in this move an intention to once again normalize contacts with Russian supporters of the dictator Putin and the war.
That's all for today. Thanks for watching. Thank you for your support. Strength to Ukraine's defenders. Glory to Ukraine. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment and share. See you next time.